Everyone thinks they can live next to a fire until the wind changes. For months, the Gulf watched America, Israel, and Iran drift toward confrontation, knowing perfectly well that conflict in West Asia spreads like oil on water. Now that spill is reaching their shores. Fresh reports indicate a one-way attack drone, resembling hardware manufactured in the United Arab Emirates, recently struck Iran's port of Bandar Abbas. If these reports hold true, a major threshold has been crossed. This marks the first time the UAE has actively fielded munitions against Iranian territory, signaling their direct entry into the conflict. Iran's response across the region has been massive. Over the course of a 4.5-month bombing campaign, Tehran has fired more than 2,000 drones and over 500 ballistic missiles toward Gulf countries. The warnings of regional escalation are no longer hypothetical. The conflict is entirely uncontained, and the Gulf is now both a direct participant and an inevitable target. But Tehran isn't striking these countries at random. The primary targets drawing this fire are the sprawling American military hubs hosted locally across the Gulf. For decades, the conventional wisdom held that these fixed installations were the ultimate insurance policy. Hosting them was supposed to guarantee Washington's protection and automatically deter Iranian aggression. The reality is exactly the opposite. These bases have painted giant bullseyes on the backs of the host nations, making them hostages to a confrontation they neither control nor can escape. The operational cost is severe. Gulf militaries are currently forced to divert their own precious air defense interceptors and national security resources simply to shield these American installations. The very system designed to keep the Gulf safe has turned them into sitting ducks in someone else's war. A physical American military presence does not guarantee American protection. So if Washington's protection is failing, why are some of the wealthiest states on Earth seemingly powerless to stop the war from consuming them? They certainly have the leverage to force a resolution. First, they control the world's economic bloodstream, sitting on nearly 1/3 of global oil reserves and 1/5 of all natural gas. This graphic illustrates the engine of their second massive advantage, a system known as petrodollar recycling. For decades, Gulf energy has flowed outward into global markets, generating staggering revenues that flow right back. But that wealth doesn't just sit in a vault. Those energy earnings are deliberately reinvested right back into foreign assets, specifically heavily into United States financial markets. These investments do heavy lifting. They reinforce the global dominance of the US dollar, provide critical liquidity to American banks, and directly contribute to lower borrowing costs for the United States government. Finally, there is the strategic footprint itself. America strictly requires Gulf geography to protect shipping lanes, manage troop deployments, and physically project military power across West Asia. Through these capital injections and geographic access, the Gulf states effectively underwrite the very financial and military systems that allow American power to function. We arrive at a glaring contradiction. With control over vital oil supplies, trillions in banking capital, and essential military real estate, why does Washington persistently ignore Gulf priorities? We have seen this exact dynamic before. In 2003, Gulf states explicitly warned Washington that invading Iraq and overthrowing Saddam Hussein would unleash regional chaos and ultimately strengthen Iran. Their warnings proved entirely accurate, yet Washington brushed those concerns aside completely because it had its own specific, unyielding priorities. It comes down to a harsh rule of geopolitics. Leverage sitting idle in a bank account is merely decoration. It only becomes power when you are fully willing to use it. Trillions of dollars and oceans of oil mean absolutely nothing if a region lacks the political will to weaponize those assets against a partner that refuses to listen. The reason the Gulf struggles to weaponize its assets is simple. The region speaks in different voices, and Washington knows exactly how to exploit that. The British originally called it divide and rule. The United States simply gave it a modern upgrade and rebranded it under the guise of partnership. The mechanics are straightforward. You keep the Gulf nations at the table, but ensure they remain fragmented and never agree on a unified front. Look at the transactional reality of this arrangement. The United States takes the bases, secures the oil flow, and absorbs the bank accounts. but provides zero reciprocal listening when its own policies endanger the hosts. This lopsided arrangement functions as an extraction engine, harvesting regional assets while ensuring no single Gulf state gains the independence needed to challenge Washington's priorities. Recent bombardments across the region have exposed a physical limit to Washington's security guarantees. For the Gulf, the domestic stakes are too high to ignore. Continued hostilities threaten to derail their massive economic modernization goals, rattling global investors and disrupting vital trade routes. The only viable path forward is internal. The Gulf states must bridge their divisions and build a collective security framework entirely of their own design. The Gulf Cooperation Council is facing a permanent binary choice: overcome internal friction to become the unified architects of their own peace, or remain fragmented, serving as the launchpad and the inevitable casualties of other people's wars.